amazing, absolutely just stupefying episode of the Arcane Archive presents MetaTalks. That's right. We are back once again for what is on today's docket, Sammy?
We are doing another subclass episode.
That's right. Another subclass discussion. I do believe this is numero 8 at this point.
We've talked about a lot of subclasses.
We have, and we're kind of going through them. We still got a decent amount to go, too, actually, honestly, all things considered. Obviously, not every class is created equal, so say, at least in terms of subclasses, that's been supplied to them. So obviously, at some point, more classes or subclasses might be, showcased than others, maybe. We'll see. But at the moment, we do have, as we have done before, 4 amazing, interesting subclasses to talk about with you today. Sammy, what are your 2 picks for today?
Yeah, I'm doing a personal favorite of mine, the Eldritch Knight, as well as the Swarmkeeper Ranger. I've only played Eldritch Knight. Now I haven't played Swarmkeeper, so I can't speak too much on that effectiveness in fighting, but I have some opinions.
I was gonna say, I believe I have seen one time a Swarmkeeper just briefly in action.
Yeah,
and it was interesting for sure. It definitely showcased the abilities itself. Definitely have a nice kind of flavorful aspect to them, and I like kind of where they were going with it. But the actual application, I feel like, but we'll talk more about that later. As for moi, I have specifically chosen 2 rather relatively famous and beloved, yet maybe slightly hated. So you know what? Maybe it might be accurate to say these are both rather controversial subclasses in the RPG community a bit for different reasons. The first one I will be discussing is going to be the Circle of the Moon Druid. The second class is going to be the Assassin Rogue. Again, both of these absolutely iconic archetypes in the community. I do believe we have touched upon the Circle of the Moon Druid a little bit, I believe in our original just full classes video way back when. But
our
5-hour long,
2-part video.
Just straight up. Actually, I think it was a total of maybe over 8 hours in total.
No,
I think the first one was 3 hours, and then part 2 was 5. That we were just going nonstop for the whole thing. So we were looking to try and do that overall. Maybe not the best format per se, but it was
great.
It was a lot of fun for us at the time. We were just we're just gonna try and run through every single one as much as we can. Unfortunately, for the part 1, some other emergency stuff kind of popped up, and so we weren't able to do the whole thing in the full like we wanted. But regardless, these 2 archetypes, even the Assassin Rogue as well, they're very famous, as you might imagine. Assassin Rogue has been around since basically the beginning. It was one of the
both
original.
Of them have.
Yeah, even Moon Druid. You're right. They both were part of the original Player's Handbook introductions for these classes for 5th edition. And
I believe I'm pretty sure Eldritch Knight was as well.
Yes, Eldritch Knight was also an OG. It was specifically Champion, Eldritch Knight, and what was the third? Was it Battlemaster? Yeah, I was going to say Battlemaster was the third. And then for Rogue, obviously very similar. It was the Assassin, it was the Thief, and it was the Arcane Trickster, I do believe. But you know what? We've rambled on enough about all that preamble. We're supposed to be getting in here in today's episode of the Arcane Archive presents MetaTalks, Subclass Discussion 8. Although I will say one more thing before we get fully started. Please be sure, if you haven't already, to like and comment on the video, subscribe, and share the channel. As always, we appreciate all the support that you guys can offer. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right on in. Sammy, why don't you go ahead and take it away with your first choice for today?
Yeah. So starting off, we have the Eldritch Knight. As Adam stated, a original 5e subclass. There were plenty kind of Spellblade type classes in Pathfinder, and I think they believe in 4th.
Yeah, I believe in 4th
edition.
Yep. Even 3.5 kind of had with the
3.5 had plenty as well.
Especially with the Gestalt, you could do that really easily.
And obviously spellblades are kind of, it's, the melee, martial class that can also cast spells. It's a common fantasy trope. Ostensibly the Eldritch Knight takes the cake of, I'm gonna hit things hard, and also I can cast cantrips, and some spells. Uh, we'll read like kind of the header. The archetypal Eldritch Knight combines the martial mastery common to all fighters with a careful study of magic. Eldritch Knights use magical techniques similar to those practiced by wizards. They focus their study on 2 of the 8 schools of magic: abjuration and evocation. Abjuration spells grant an Eldritch Knight additional protection in battle, and evocation spells deal damage to many foes at once, extending the fighter's reach in combat. These knights learn from a comparatively small number of spells, committing them to memory instead of keeping them in a spellbook. Now, this is ostensibly, they learn spells. They're
Yep.
intelligence based, like a wizard.
Yeah.
They're kind of like discount wizards, similar to the arcane trickster.
Very, very much
Um,
so. Yes.
but it's all from memory. They don't have a book. They
Yeah.
can't learn spells like a wizard. Albeit there might be DMs out there who will let you. The reality is that you can only take from 2 schools, abjuration and evocation.
Yeah.
Mind you, both great.
They are. They're one of the
you
2 best, like,
you are,
or 2
you
of the
are
best, I
kind
should
of
say.
missing out on, like
Divination,
illusion, divination,
conjuration.
conjuration. So like there are some spells you're not going to use, and it sucks. But also, like,
I mean, you have
you're not
kind of 2 of the best schools
you're
for exactly for the purposes. You're a fighter.
yeah.
You are still predominantly designed for fighting. All of your
Yes.
spells are therefore deliberately structured to assist you with fighting, mostly. I mean, some of them might be able to do something maybe a little bit out of combat too, but predominantly it's just
Eh,
supposed to help augment your
it
martial or combat prowess even
yeah.
more so.
From my experience, you are almost entirely only going to be using magic in combat. It's just
Most of
kind
the
of,
time. It's just how it
yeah.
works. Like, you
It's just
are a
most.
fighter. That's
You're not a
what you
utility
do.
caster in any way. But the reality is, at 3rd level, when you take the subclass, you get spellcasting. You get 2 cantrips of your choice from the wizard spell list. You get a 3rd cantrip at 10th level. And you have spell slots. Now, Eldritch Knights are, I believe, quarter casters.
Yeah,
So
I believe so.
your spell slots, similar to the Artificer, are going to be a little bit strange and different, and you're going to have a separate table. Now
You
your
will
spell
only
casting.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say
sorry.
you know it's good. I was gonna say you only get, like, on that topic, you will only get to a maximum of 4th level spells. You
Yeah,
will not get anything higher than that. And at literally max level of 20th, you are only going to know a total of 13 spells.
and you only have 1 4th level spell slot. So
Yeah.
here's the thing with Eldritch Knight. Your spell save and your spell save DC and attack modifier, it's the same as if you were a wizard. It's your
It's your
proficiency plus your intelligence.
intelligence. Yeah.
But just for some context, I'm going to go quickly over fighter level versus what you have available to you. At 3rd level, you have actually 3rd through 9th level, you have only 2 cantrips.
Yep.
And in that time, you go from knowing 3 spells at 3rd level, 4 spells at 4th, 5th, and 6th level, 5 spells at 7th level, and 6 spells at 8th and 9th level. You will, for a majority of this time, up until 6th level, you only have 1st level spell slots.
Yep.
At 3rd level, you have 1. At 4th level, you have 3, all the way till 6th level. And then at 7th level, all the way till 9th level, you have 4 1st level spell slots. At 7th level, you start dipping into 2nd level spell slots where you have 2, all the way to level 10, or all the way to level 9. The reality is like the main big parts here is that you get a 3rd cantrip at level 7 or level 10. You get access to 3rd level spells at 13th level, which you only have 2 spell slots for. You get to 3 3rd level spell slots at 16th level, and then you have 3 for the rest of the game until 19th level, where you get 1 4th level spell slot. So at the max level, an Eldritch Knight has, in order, 3 cantrips, 13 known spells, 4 1st level spell slots, 3 2nd level spell slots, 3 3rd level spell slots, and 1 4th level spell slot. Now, if you've played an Artificer before or an Arcane Trickster, this is not unfamiliar with you.
I mean, obviously, even an
also, like,
Artificer has a
Ranger,
little bit more bang for their buck.
not
I mean,
much.
I mean, well, same for like Paladin, for instance, right?
Yeah,
Even at like max level, Paladins only
they
get
get up to
access
5th level.
to 5th level spell slots.
Yeah, so
And
the
they're, you know, so it's like
Paladins are half casters. These guys
yes.
are quarter. So
Yeah.
and I think the reason that they did that is because you only get access to spells because you're picking a subclass. This isn't Paladin where you part of the class
It's
is
literally
spellcasting.
intrinsically tied to
Yeah,
magic. Like
ranger.
this is a learned thing, not more of
Yeah,
an intrinsically tied or hybrid
but
thing, you
that's
know.
okay. Like to be completely honest,
Well,
it's not a terrible
I mean, I
trade-off.
was gonna say
It's giving you
because
versatility, albeit
and
not
in I
crazy
mean,
versatility, but
well,
versatility nonetheless.
I mean, maybe not so much versatility again, so much as it's a pretty decent augmentation or boost to what you're already naturally good at. Again, we talk about this all the time with fighters, right? Fighters are good at what? Fighting. Fighting. And with magic, you obviously can just become better at that. Like it literally gives an example of like at 3rd level, you can take the shield spell, right? Just right away.
Yeah.
That automatically instantly boosts your AC as a
Uh,
fighter. You're already gonna have probably a decently high AC. Like
two like really good spells you should always take as an Eldritch Knight. Shield, absorb elements.
yep.
And the reason being is that you're primarily hitting people with big swords.
And you're gonna get hit with a lot of stuff.
But if you absorb elements, you then get to add that to your next attack.
Yeah.
So ostensibly, we'll go over what they get. It's not a whole lot. It's a fairly simple subclass considering when it was added to the game.
Well, it's also kind of like good for it though too. It's also, I will say, I think the subclass is a great like almost opening for any players who might be interested in playing like a full caster, like either a wizard, druid, or cleric, because it is a much, again, like Sammy just said, incredibly simplified, streamlined introduction to magic, how it works. Now, obviously, with the others, you're going to have a vast, huge, more plethora of spells and options, which can get complicated. But at the very least, this is a great introduction to like how you can use spells, how spells are supposed to be used, how you can apply them, and how to keep track of spell slots and stuff like that.
This is also like, oh, I want to play a what's the
spell sword or
what's the warlock one?
What? The I can't believe I'm forgetting it. The hexblade.
The hexblade warlock, but you don't want to be squishy.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Now, at level 3, they also get weapon bond. You learn a ritual that creates a magical bond between yourself and one weapon. You perform the ritual over the course of an hour, which can be done during a short rest. The weapon must be within your reach throughout the ritual, and at the conclusion of which you touch the weapon and forge the bond. Once you have bonded yourself to a weapon, you can't be disarmed of that weapon unless you're incapacitated. If it is on the same plane of existence, you can summon that weapon as a bonus action on your turn, causing it to teleport instantly to your hand. You can have up to 2 bonded weapons, but can summon only one at a time with your bonus action. If you attempt to bond with a 3rd weapon, you must break the bond with one of the other 2. Now, this means disarming attack doesn't work on you. Heat metal dropping your weapon, you can't drop it.
Or you can choose to let go of it, but it doesn't force you to.
It can't, even if you fail to save to quote unquote drop the weapon, you get to smile at your DM and say no.
I mean, you're still gonna have disadvantage on attack rolls with it though, if you hold it. So you know that is still a thing.
You cannot be
damage. You cannot forcibly be disarmed. Yes.
No. But it's also fun because you can do something like I did, where in the original Horde of the Dragon Queen, I had my Eldritch Knight grab Hazaron, the evil,
the dark
sword,
great sword,
and when it started to take over my conscience, I threw it into the ocean, and it sunk to, but I kept my bond to it, and it sunk to the bottom of the ocean. And then when we were fighting a big fight later on, and I knew my character was going to get written off because we were going to get our original character, my original character back, I summoned the weapon and killed someone with it, and then and then I gave it to them. Now, the funny thing is that my old character did keep the bond, but the reality is like you can do some silly shit with it.
I mean, again, one of the coolest aspects, again, like this, like as we constantly say with these subclass discussions, one of the best aspects of a subclass is when a feature is something that you will use for the entirety of your career with that character. And this particular ability has so much versatility and flexibility just for fighters in general, but even for any characters, like the ability to just summon your weapon. I mean, not only is like the flavor of it so cool, it's like you're in freaking Final Fantasy here, literally just like shink and like a flash of light, and you just have a blade here in your hand, ready to go, and then you can't be disarmed with it. On top of that, like
it also means, in the grand scheme of things, you're never unarmed.
You're never unarmed. You are never because a fighter without their weapons is like, you know.
Well, the cool part is it doesn't matter if you are gagged. It doesn't matter if you have handcuffs on. It doesn't matter.
You can summon it
because it just
at any point. You literally just put your hand up and it just in imminence. Again, like Final Fantasy, you cannot be so even if you get like, you know, you have to go into like a prison, or you have to pretend to be somebody else, or pretend to be like a prisoner or whatever, you can go in there, and at any point you can just like, you might not have your armor, which would be one thing, but you will always have your weapon.
It's also this really cool thing of like, if someone does surprise you, you don't have a weapon in your hand, you can place your fist against their chest and then summon the weapon. And it's inside them, which is a cool thing that most DMs won't like when you do that.
I was gonna say they probably won't allow that, but it's a cool idea.
What I like to do is,
for sure,
at my tables, which I know at a lot of tables, when you do a crazy attack and kill something, people, you know, the DM will be like, "How do you want to
do this?"
And one of my favorite moves is to go to attack somebody and then feint and drop the weapon, and as they're focused on the weapon, my guy would just grab the back of their shoulder and then push his hand against their chest and then resummon the weapon in a different spot.
I like it. I love it. That's phenomenal. We can let that allowed. Absolutely.
What a terrible thing to do to somebody, but it's very fun. It also allows you to very quickly switch between two weapons. If you don't if you have like two separate weapons, which is cool. There's no limit on what kind of weapon, because you're a fighter, so it could be a bow, it could be a sword, it could be, you know,
anything.
A myriad of weapons, which is always fun. This also, what's cool is you're technically considered a spellcaster, so there are magic items. There are magic items that you can attune to
that only spellcasters can attune to,
which is fun. But moving on to your next feature at level 7, you get War Magic. When you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can make one weapon attack as a bonus action. It's not the greatest. The reality is,
yeah, you know,
the reality is, there are some. The main problem is, right, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, are they actions or bonus actions?
They are actions to cast.
Okay,
yes.
So at level 7,
I will say though, obviously they are you do the casting as part of you attacking with your weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
But it still technically counts as casting a spell, and so your multi-attack wouldn't necessarily normally take effect, unfortunately.
But here's the cool thing. At level 7, you can only attack twice anyway.
Yep.
What this allows you to do is cast Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, hit once, and then use your bonus action to hit a second time. So you don't lose out on an attack.
Or if you take, you know, long range option, you have, you know, Firebolt or Frostbite or Ray of Frost, you can approach an enemy, fire at long range for like maybe like a nice D10 of fire damage as you approach and come up, and then bonus action slash at them. So that, you know, you have a little bit more versatility, but still the ability, if you can get close, to then, you know, take advantage of that as well.
It's a
because I believe at 7th level you would get 2d10 actually for your Firebolt. So like that's nothing to sneeze at. Again, even you're at that point, unless you're like wielding, I mean, even like your a great sword would be 2d6.
Yeah.
You know, and so it would be like
the only difference is you get your plus to your modifier and stuff like that.
And so like maybe on average you might deal more damage than a Firebolt, but your Firebolt has the potential to deal higher max damage as well. So
but it gives you some
versatility.
The reality is at 7th level, until you get to 11th level where you can attack 3 times, it's actually, you do more damage using a Booming Blade or a Green Flame Blade.
Yes,
and
no,
also
you
using
absolutely
your bonus
can.
action to attack.
Yes, you absolutely
which
can.
means at 7th level, as an Eldritch Knight, you have one of the best power spikes in this subclass, for consistent turn-by-turn damage.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to 10th level, You get Eldritch Strike. At 10th level, you learn how to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's resistance to your spells. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. Now, what I really wish...
It's okay. The only issue is, as an Eldritch Knight, you're not going to necessarily have or even take a lot of spells that are going to be causing saving throws against your opponent. Like, it's
let's for the sake of argument, I'm gonna click wizard spells and then go in and click, what is it, can I do school? Yeah, schools.
Yeah, you can
Abjuration,
you can deliberately switch it up to
Abjuration,
schools.
Evocation.
I also have something that can help with that.
Spell level is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's just, for the sake of argument, let's see what things you would actually be casting that would rely on a save, that you really would need to worry about.
So you could learn Burning Hands, you could learn Catapult, Cause Fear, Charm
Thunderwave.
You could do Color Spray. You could
Shatter.
Earth Tremor. Shatter is a great one.
Fireball,
sure.
Technically.
Well, obviously at 10th level, you won't have Fireball just yet. I think you get there at 13th, but like obviously Fireball is a very specific one. Like Frost Fingers, like I'm just looking at like the level 1 spells that you'll have probably at this point. You can have Ice Knife, which would be helpful, obviously.
But there is
there are a couple. You know, Sleep. I'm not Sleep isn't a save, but just funniness, Thunderwave, yeah, Witch Bolt. That's an attack. Like you do it because you are specifically pulling from the wizard spell list. You will have a lot of options, but it's like again, like we were saying before, like Sammy said, like again, to be fair, this is coming from two individuals who have been colloquially kind of known or identified as power gamers, right? So he and I are usually always looking. This? Yeah, I was gonna say, you want to go ahead and just like look at your title again that you put there? Yeah. So he and I are usually probably always looking for the way to, you know, really maximize, you know, our effectiveness, because that's just what we find fun and interesting, right? To be like, this is just cool to be able to like mix and do this stuff to like, you know, really like, you know, but to be fair, you do have a lot of options. Like in terms of just our opinions, obviously, like what we enjoy the most and what is obviously going to be the most effective, efficient application or spells to take for your Eldritch Knight is you still want to be able to fight like a fighter as well, but to simply augment your fighter fighting with a lot of arcane empowerment and artillery, right? So you want to take stuff that it gives you even more options or bonuses to your weapon attacks, or if it doesn't take away from your weapon attacks, it can be an extra additional, like Dragon's Breath would be a great option too. You could literally attack twice with that, and then Dragon's Breath is a bonus action, you know, in the thick of things with some enemies. Obviously, you also have like magic weapon or elemental, I think, weapon also might be at some point.
No, I think that's a different, that's not evocation or abjuration.
Is it not? Oh,
no.
Well, no, not pyrotechnics. Wait, you also get,
I mean, Shatter is a good example.
For some reason, this is filter.
And Thunderwave. You know, like the reality is, even like Snare, I don't know. There's things you can do, and like is it great?
I mean, it's
you
decent.
Can use
again.
You can use Frost Fingers.
Ooh, you could use Darkness, and if you take your fighting style Blind Sight, like because evocation, you could literally you wouldn't be as maybe as effective as like a, you know,
there's no save on Darkness. So
that's what I mean. Well, it's not about the save. It's just like that's another effective spell that you could take to just get instant, like, you know, advantage on any creature within 10 feet of you, right? Like you can literally just cast Darkness on yourself, move around, And because you have blind sight with your fighting style, you can just attack him in the darkness at advantage, and he would have disadvantage to fight you. Couldn't cast spells depending. Continual flame, minus binding eye, shatter, Snorlax ward, warding wind. I mean, as a fighter, you also, or as an Eldritch Knight, you also get access to Dispel Magic and Counterspell at 13th level.
Which,
like,
I mean, with your
I would take
level 3 spell slots.
I mean, Counterspell can be huge. Like,
I would leave the dispelling to a wizard.
I would say take like a Fireball and a Counterspell just to have, like, again, a bit more like protection. Wow, you could also take Leomund's Tiny Hut. And you could do it as a ritual too, I believe. Like, you know, again, you don't really need to do that though, I think. Although no, the Eldritch Knights don't get ritual casting, do they? Or is it because they kind of do it like wizards that they can?
I'm not seeing ritual casting here.
Yeah, so I don't think they get it either then. Melf's
they do not.
Melf's Minute Meteors is pretty great.
There's options. I would say if you're gonna do this, kind of look ahead of time.
You got one banishment. You got one banishment
at level 20. Yep. I would not take banishment.
I mean,
it's just
it could help a lot.
The reality is, let's look at the level 4 spells. I think
you got Ice Storm, you got Wall of Fire, you got Storm Sphere.
I don't know. I feel like something like Fire Shield or
I mean, Fire Shield could be nice for sure, but
like Storm, like something that isn't going to be something you have to keep concentration on.
Plus, yeah, I mean, like Fire Shield is cool because
I didn't realize they added Gate Seal. That's a huge spell for certain campaigns.
Certain campaigns, yes.
But yeah, there's things you can do, and it's not terrible.
It's you know, it's just compared to maybe some other classes, like again, like the Blade Singer, it kind of, you know,
it's kind of the opposite. It's the polar opposite to Blade Singer.
Kind of, but even Blade Singer blends a lot of like more martial with magic even better.
The only difference is with Blade Singer, if you get hit, it's really bad.
It can be, but
it's not.
I mean, at higher levels, though, actually, it becomes even less of a problem, though, because with your Song of Defense, you also can just mitigate.
But if you manage to get hit as a Blade Singer, it is a lot more scary than it would be as an Eldritch Knight.
True,
and that is kind of the dichotomy of it. The Eldritch Knight is a stalwart, literal just piece of shit sitting in the middle of a fight.
You're an arcane tank, is what you are.
You're not doing
literally
nothing to me, man.
You're an arcane tank. It's already going to be hard to hit you with shield, and even if you do take damage, you're already
elements.
Like, you got to absorb elements for saving throws. Like, that's the thing. Shield and absorb elements. Like, shield is for attacks, absorb elements is for elemental saving throws.
Yeah,
and it's like,
and to be fair, like being able to run around and just, you know, you get some magic armor with some resistances or some potions.
I mean, you get you get a nice magic weapon like a flame tongue longsword or something, and then you just coat it in like your absorb elements for another elemental boon, and then you coat it with like green flame blade or booming blade on top of it, and slash, and then you attack again with a bonus. That, like, you can do some crazy buco damage with this subclass, y'all. It's not anything to take lightly, even if it is an OG subclass.
It's not as good as some of the newer ones, but I think it still deserves its spot.
Oh, absolutely. It will always remain a top contender because it's the OG spell sword, and it's like,
and
you gotta put respect on the name. You gotta put some respect on the name.
It gets a cool ability that this is an uncommon thing for fighters. It has an ability that augments its action surge, which you don't normally see, which is the Arcane Charge.
At 15th level,
you gain the ability to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see when you use your action surge. You can teleport before or after the additional action. Now, what that means, for action surge is also a completely
it's a completely free thing.
The reality is action surge is so much different on the Eldritch Knight than everybody else just because of what you have at your disposal. Being able to cast multiple spells or augment yourself in a different way than, say, just a normal run-of-the-mill
attack.
Fighter. Yeah. But the reality is being able to teleport
30 feet. It's like a Misty Step, basically.
Hey, it's 30 feet.
It's like a Misty Step.
And it's action surge, which you'll have a couple uses of. It'll be nice.
I mean, it's also, I think at 15th level at this point, you have at least 2 action surges, I believe. Yeah.
And then at 18th level, You get improved war magic. Starting at 18th level, when you use your action to cast a spell, you can make one weapon attack as a bonus action. Is it great?
It's pretty mediocre, pretty underwhelming for an 18th level ability, to be fair. Like,
let's see.
But again, that also means now, though, at 18th level, you know, you could cast a fireball and then attack as a bonus action. Like, so you could literally like.
And the cool part is, if you attacked last turn, if you say you run into a group of 3 people, you attack 3 of them because you have enough attacks.
You have 3 attacks right now, yeah.
And then you back off. And then next turn, if they haven't moved towards you, you fireball them. They'll all have disadvantage on the save. And then you can run back in and attack another one.
Well, here's the thing I was going to say. You could also just not move away. You could grow up, attack all 3 of them.
Oh, fireball right on the edge of you?
Not even on the edge. Hit yourself, too. Fireball. If you have at that point, probably some like... You're probably going to have something with fire resistance. Or at that point, you also just cast Absorb Elements, coat your weapon, and then attack them with a bonus action.
Yeah, like, it would be nice. The other thing is... you could fireball. Well, no, you could if you hit them the turn before, you could fireball them, action surge, and then also have a bonus action attack, and you could do. I mean, you do pretty good damage. The reality is like it's not conventionally fantastic, but it's these little things that like it'll work its way out.
It just gives you some diversity, some flexibility, and options. That is one of the best things about any class or subclass. The options you have. Now, obviously, depending on your personal preference, skill level, desire of play, the amount of options you have might not always be great. Like having more options might not always be as fun as it being just kind of more straightforward and simple. In my experience, I've seen a number of people who maybe started out, especially if you're new, you might prefer to have like less options because it can be really overwhelming at first. And then, but as you go on though, I've seen people being like, I'm getting kind of bored with just the same old, I whack them. I bap them and bip them and bop them, and they want something a little bit more.
And bonk them.
Yeah, and so this, particular subclass is one where you always have the option of just being just simple wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, if you want. But you also then, if you want to have a little extra seasoning on there for you, you got it in spades for you right there. You got plenty of stuff that you can apply, which is great. And for this particular thing, like that's why the Eldritch Knight will forever and always remain, as one of the most beloved subclasses in the community, because it's like, again, in my opinion, same thing with Arcane Trickster. Again, for this, like both of them have relatively like decent to maybe more underwhelming, mediocre abilities and features here or there. But depending on kind of how you use them, though, they give you just such a plethora of juicy options and opportunities in a modicum of different situations, right? Like, again, like Sam just said, that weapon bond, that's the first ability that you get at 3rd level. That's your first feature at 3rd level. And he was able to come up with a way to not only like utilize it in such a super badass clutch moment, but even in just like coming up with a flavorful way of like doing your execution style finishers, right? Things like that. It gives you, and that's just RP, right? That's more RP, or even like, obviously the first example is combat, but even just the RP aspect of like, you drop it. Like I imagine it almost similar to like the Taraka maneuver or the Taraka form in Star Wars, where like when you're doing like a beam saber clash, and then one of you turns your lightsaber off, and the other dude like falls forward, and then you just turn it on right next to him, and it just goes through him as it extends out or as it activates. It's like, that is a dope, cool way of like doing a finisher, where like if you're like clashing with somebody with a sword, and then you just like dodge to the left and you just let go of your blade, and they have all their weight behind it, they just fall forward, and you literally just like turn behind them and like put your arm up to them and then just summon your blade through them like that. That's cool. And that is why, like with certain things like this, you kind of got to let your imagination run a little bit wild to really provide you with like the full capacity and potential of this kind of subclass, even though it at first looks to be a little bit more simplistic than some of the others. But I do believe, Sam, unless there's anything else that you would like to say in regards to our dear Eldritch Knight.
No, I thought it's one of those like kind of I think underappreciated subclasses. It is a bit finicky and like kind of you have to get a hang of it and figure out what is your best kind of
Option.
strategy.
Yeah, all your options.
It's definitely one of those things like you could just hit people every time. But getting a little creative, having some fun with it, and you also have access to different types of damage, which is nice, I think.
That too, yeah. Well, again,
like,
elemental, again, like diversity and application, like again, because you could also take a lightning bolt if you prefer for whatever reason for a little bit more distance, I guess, or like you could take obviously like ice storm. Obviously that would be at like 19th level, but still, like you have a little bit more elemental versatility, which is awesome. And for just in case any particular enemy has certain resistances or immunities.
But I think it's a fun one, definitely.
Hey, cool. Again, will always remain as a community favorite for that reason. It is an OG, and yet it has withstood the test of time to such an extent where it is still relevant. It is still a relevant subclass. It will always be a welcome subclass for any table. I don't believe any dungeon master or any other players will ever be like, an Eldritch Knight? What? Ew.
Well,
like, I don't think I've ever heard of it. Like, I don't see, like, again, maybe some, if they're like particularly super douchey players or GMs, will try to give you shit for it. But in that case, you probably should be playing at that table anyways.
Yeah. When I played Eldritch Knight, I got some weird looks, but that was also
really
because
that's
not like oh, I can't believe you picked that, but more of course you fucking picked Eldritch Knight. But yeah, that's for different reasons.
Fair. All right. Well, then, with that being the case, that is the totality of the Eldritch Knight as told by us here at the Arcane Archive. I will go ahead and take the baton over here now, Sammy, for my first pick of today, and that is going to be the Circle of the Moon Druid. Revisited, I guess, since I believe we did talk about it in the original class episode, because this particular subclass, not even just for the Druid, but just in the full totality of the game, is widely considered to be one of the most broken, busted, powerful subclasses that you will ever be able to play. Like, just based off of the specific wording, the specific like text rules as written, it is very, especially in conjunction with and synergy with later features of just the Druid class as the archetype class, it just becomes an absolute monster at later levels. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about it. Circle of the Moon. Druids of the Circle of the Moon are fierce guardians of the wilds. Their order gathers under the full moon to share news and trade warnings. They haunt the deepest parts of the wilderness, where they might go for weeks on end before crossing paths with another humanoid creature, let alone another druid. Changeable as the moon, a druid of this circle might prowl as a great cat one night, soar over the treetops as an eagle the next day, and crash through the undergrowth in bear form to drive off a trespassing monster. The wild is in the druid's blood. So, at second level, when you get this subclass, you get the ability known as Combat Wild Shape. And yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ability that you will be using for the absolute totality of your career as a Circle of the Moon Druid. When you choose this circle at second level, you gain the ability to use Wild Shape on your turn as a bonus action rather than as an action. Yes, you heard that right, everybody. Wild Shape for every other druid is specifically an action to do. It is not a bonus action. I believe I played with a number of people before who thought that druids like Wild Shape was a bonus action, and I do believe they thought that because, again, this subclass is so popular, so many people take it, and I think a lot of the instances and where they have seen Wild Shape used as a bonus action is because they were playing this specific moon druid.
100%.
And they didn't necessarily realize that that's not applicable to every druid. It is just for the Circle of the Moon. Additionally, while you are transformed by wild shape, you can use a bonus action to expend 1 spell slot to regain 1d8 hit points per level of the spell slot expended. Okay, once again, that right there is already an exceedingly busted mechanic and feature of this subclass, and will only continue to get even more powerful as you increase in your level and get higher level spell slots and higher like CR creatures and beasts that you can turn into. Along with the fact that this particular ability also applies to that, which is the next feature you get at this level, circle forms. The rights of your circle grant you the ability to transform into more dangerous animal forms at lower levels. Starting at 2nd level, you can use your wild shape to transform into a beast with a challenge rating as high as 1. Whereas normal druids, I believe it's probably what, 1/4, maybe 1/2 at the highest.
Well,
I
let me
think.
double check for you.
Yeah, yes indeed.
Regular
Please
wild
do.
shape at 2nd level is 1/4 max
That's
CR.
what I thought.
With no flying or swimming.
Yep.
At 4th level is 1/2 max, no flying, and at 8th level and up, it's max 1 CR.
So your maximum for normal druids up to that point is the absolute minimum for moon
It's a giant
druids.
eagle. It's a giant eagle is your best bet at the end of being a druid if you're not Circle of the Moon.
And it's like, or a giant owl, honestly. Giant owls with their flyby and 120 feet of dark vision and shit. But that being the case, the best that a max level druid can do is the absolute minimum that a moon druid can do. Already showing you, on top of the fact that literally, starting at 6th level, you can now transform into a beast with a challenge rating as high as your druid level divided by 3. Rounded down. So essentially, let's go max level here. 20th level divided by 3 would be what? Freaking 8 or 9, I believe. A total of 9, or no, not 9. It would be divided by 3. I'm not 2. So let's go ahead. 20 just divided by 3. 6. So challenge rating of 6. Technically, it's like 6.666, whatever. But essentially, yeah, it would be 6 would be the highest challenge rating at level 20. And let me actually just check to be sure about, because I'm trying to think, like, what challenge rating is a rock at?
Is a rock considered a beast?
Oh, yes. It is, again, like one of the only beasts that are like a higher level CR.
So it's a max CR6, right?
Yeah. It's a challenge 11, so you couldn't do. Oh no, I'm sorry. Rock technically is a monstrosity. Never mind.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
For some reason, I thought rock was considered like the only normal beast.
So
but it's a CR11 anyway. But let's see.
For the sake of this, let's look at some CR6.
That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah,
Mammoth,
from
Brontosaurus, giant shark, giant crocodile. Mammoth is the CR6 beast.
Yeah. Yep.
Which, just for context, it has 126 health, trampling charge, gore. Let's look at some ones.
There's a, what is this? Gabali is apparently a creature as well of CR6. It almost looks like a.
Is it a beast?
Yeah, it's a beast. I put specifically beast as well as CR6 maximum. It's from Tome of Beasts that I purchased. Did you get Tome of Beasts from Cobalt Press?
Oh no, that's not a 5th edition book. So
no,
I didn't buy it.
But it is technically they allow it now. So like, but that is, you could technically do that. They have like a camouflage ability. And they have 50 feet of movement, 126 hit points, 15 AC. It's like a land crocodile kind of thing. Only a bit bigger, yeah. It's like a chameleon crocodile, literally is what it is. Greater death butterfly swarm. I don't know if that would necessarily. A Kongomodo, which is like a big ass pterodactyl.
I mean, even in baseline books, you have giant crocodiles.
Yeah, you can obviously do a giant crocodile easy. You could do a giant
shark.
2-headed crocodile. But yeah,
Giant
that's it.
sub. Yeah,
I'd say
large subterranean
the mammoth
lizard.
is your CR6 beast creature that you can
Hulking
turn into.
crab.
I mean, it's like, yeah.
Triceratops. Triceratops is good.
Triceratops is a great one.
Although mammoth is just a better version of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say mammoth is kind of
Um,
just probably a better
but
version of a
the reality
Triceratops. It's
is,
like,
there's also the option, of course, that your DM will give you custom beasts. That's always been a thing that
usually, I was gonna say, yeah,
that
agreed.
people talk about. But the reality is, you're not wild shaping to be this damage dealing powerhouse.
No.
Contrary to the popular belief in like Baldur's Gate, where being a Circle of the Moon owl bear,
Just
you
decimates
can
everything. To
do
be
crazy
fair,
shit.
in the game, in tabletop, in the tabletop
You
version,
cannot
you
be
can't
owlbear.
become an owl bear. They're apparently trying to maybe change that with
Yeah,
the new one that they're introducing in a little while, or I don't even know when at this point. I have not been keeping up with that because
I honestly,
I
I'm too
don't really
afraid.
care. I don't really care.
I'm too afraid. I don't want it to change all the things I love.
I mean, that's what they're saying. They're not going to change all the stuff. Like, it's still going to basically be. I don't think they're even calling it 1D&D anymore. I think it's literally going to be a literal addition, or like almost a DLC for 5th edition. It's just going to be like 5.5. I think is going to be even more accurate now than it was when people are like jokingly calling it that before. But regardless, even now, you guys can see like a CR6 beast is nothing to sneeze at, especially with the fact that, like Sam said, it's not even necessarily about them doing the damage as much as it just gives your druid even more survivability. You will be, ironically, even more than a barbarian, the tankiest tank that ever tanked. Like, you can just take all the damage. And because you can use your bonus action in your wild shape to expend spell slots to then heal yourself on top of that. And we're not even, there's another, again, wild combination later on that we'll talk about in a second, which makes this even more insane than before, but we'll keep going on. Moving on, at 6 levels, when you get your next ability, it's called Primal Strike. Your attacks in beast form now count as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. Again, this one is particularly like underwhelming, not that amazing or great, all things considered. But the reality is, though, in all honesty, it doesn't need to be. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Okay, look at me right in the eyes here real quick. Just get in nice, real and close here. All right. You could literally get rid of almost every other ability in this subclass here, and it would still probably be one of the most broken, busted subclasses ever, like for the druid. Like I'm like, it's really the truth. You almost don't need almost anything else. There is one other ability in here that makes it like even more crazy and redonkulous, but you wouldn't need anything else. And this subclass would still be one of the most powerful broken builds in the game. And you know, we'll keep going again. Like, it's nice. It's like, oh, you're in your wild shape form. Oh, okay, cool. But you know what is interesting, Sammy, and we're going to touch upon this actually a little bit later because of the very specific wording of Primal Strike. But although I guess the others technically wouldn't need it, and that's why they worded it that way. Either way, moving on. At 6th level, again, you get another ability known as Circle Forms. The rights of your circle grant you the ability to transform to more dangerous animal forms even now. So starting at 6th level, okay, yeah, okay, no, we already talked about that. I don't know why they would reference that again, since it already references it at the top with your initial circle forms. Whatever. So the next actual ability that you get is at 10th level. This is again going to make the already broken, busted subclass even more broken and busted and redonkulous, and that is known as Elemental Wild Shape. You can expend 2 uses of your wild shape at the same time to transform into an air elemental, an earth elemental, a fire elemental, or a water elemental. So again, here's the thing, right? To be fair, I do believe you technically do still have to like have seen these elementals, maybe, but it also just says that you can just do that. Like
I think to me, I think you can just do it.
Like in the description, it literally just says that you can just do this. It doesn't specifically say like that you have to have seen these creatures beforehand. Maybe what, you know, like I wouldn't necessarily, I guess, be angry if a GM was like, okay, well, it functions the same as other wild shapes, and that you actually have to actually like find those elementals. But at the same time, I also don't think it's unfair or bad at all to be like, it just says that I can do that, and you can just do that.
I think this just comes with the territory of you're now so attuned in your druidic
To the
magic
natural,
to the
like,
natural planes, the elemental planes, that no, you just
you can
have
just
it.
do that. And it's also
not...
like it also does specifically is stipulating like you can't turn into like any kind of elemental, right? You can't turn into like a phoenix or a genie,
air
or
elemental, earth elemental,
it's
fire
just the
elemental.
baseline elementals. And so in that regard, I do also feel like it's just like you can just do that. If you don't have to see them, because otherwise then you would start being like, okay, well, technically speaking, if I see like a Myrmidon, or if I see like, again, like an Efreet or whatever, those are technically elementals. Can I turn into those things then? Like if I see them? So it's like, you make that argument a bit. So I think it's just like at 10th level, you can just do that. And if anybody who's ever played, and for those of you who haven't, let me just tell you, elementals, even the baseline, just general ones, like they're no slouches, right? They're not necessarily super terrible or scary for high level parties necessarily, like, or higher level. Like, you know, if you're around, I would even say like, you know, by 5th level, they're probably still a bit of a threat, especially if you have them in like bulk. Like if there's like a number of them, they can be a threat. But like just a single or one or two elementals against like a party of 5th level adventurers wouldn't be that scary, most likely. They wouldn't be that terrifying. Because the biggest thing about them is they usually just have like a shit ton of like resistances and like condition immunities, and then just health is really what it is. They are just super tanky, and they don't necessarily deal like a crap ton of damage themselves, but they're just tanky, and they have like so much. Like for instance, let's just go over like a few of them here. Like we'll do the air elemental and the fire elemental, which I think are probably just going to be, I would say, among the best. So, you know, fire elemental has 102 hit points, armor class of 13, a speed of 50. An air elemental has armor class 15, 90 hit points, and a fly speed hover of 90 feet. The air elemental has resistance to lightning, thunder, and bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks, and immunity to poison. It has immunity to the conditions exhaustion, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, and unconscious. Basically, the fire elemental is almost exactly the same, except it has immunity to fire damage and poison, and then resistance to non-magical piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing. So again, even right there, like you see, like they're not like crazy, but they just have a lot of just innate resistances and like, again, health. And on top of the fact that you can still technically, like, you can heal in this form. Like, again, combat wild shape. Whenever you are transformed by wild shape, you can use your spells to just heal yourself as a bonus action. It's just a bonus action. You don't need, like, you can literally just be, like, I think one of the best showcases of the absolute busted brokenness of this thing here was from Keyleth in the original Critical Role campaign. Specifically, though, their battle royales where they would have everybody fight each other. And she was 20th level. It was a 20th level battle royale, but I believe it was her, Percy, who else? Was it Vex? I think maybe Vex, and maybe like I forget exactly what all characters were there, but essentially she just literally turned into an air elemental for basically the totality of the fight, flew up into the air like, you know, 150 feet or even more so, would come down periodically. And because of a certain ability that you get, I believe, at 18th level, she can cast spells
in
her wild shape.
That was a Well, is that
No. That's an
That's just a
ability that
druid.
all druids have, Sam. At 18th level, you get beast spells.
Yeah.
That's just a thing all druids have.
Yeah.
And because of that, you believe it's like you can cast spells from your wild shape. Let me just be clear about the wording though, just to be sure. Maybe technically it wouldn't work as a in your beast spells. Yeah, no. When in any shape you assume while using wild shape.
Oh yeah.
So she could just do that. She could literally fly up, fly down, cast a spell, any spell, as an action, fly up, and if at any point anybody with like a ranged attack at all or whatever else hit her with damage, she could just in bonus action heal herself for a D8 per spell level. And at 20th level as a druid, yeah, you can just like, and on top of that, even if she took damage, she didn't even have to do that. She wouldn't even have to use her spell healing because she could just use a bonus action to wild shape again and then get all her hit points back for that new wild shape that she just transformed into. This is what makes this subclass at high level, again, if not the absolute most broken, busted subclass in the game, at one of. Like, it is up there with everything. You literally have like a literal infinite health glitch because you don't, because again, once you reach Archdruid level at 20th level, you have unlimited beast or wild shapes. You have unlimited wild shapes. The only thing that like restricted this initially is the fact that you only get two. You only get two wild shapes until you reach 20th level as an Archdruid, and then you have unlimited wild shapes. And then this subclass becomes basically almost immortal. It becomes
you're really
an immortal god. You cannot, like, unless they are able to shut down your magic, they hit you with like an anti-magic field, you are essentially like an immortal god who cannot be defeated. You can just keep wild shaping to then get health back after you lose it. So it's like, unless the GM specifically like implements the rule that like, hey, like, because that was one thing that helped they put in for the shape change spell at 9th level, right? You have a 9th level spell called shape change, which basically allows you to do this, technically even more powerful because you can turn into any creature with a CR rating equal to your level. So you can turn into like ancient dragons and crap like that. But they specifically made the caveat in that spell that wherever your hit points are at, if you transform into another creature, your hit points stay there. If they would have a higher hit point total, doesn't matter. Your hit points always remain at that level from the initial like creature that you transformed into, and then if you took any damage in that form. So you can't keep doing the infinite heal thing. They didn't put any such limitation with this subclass. Now, I, as a GM, this is one of the few times as a GM that I would literally have to put my foot down and be like, okay, look, this thing is just way too ridiculous. Because I like high level play, right? To be perfectly fair, you might not really have access or be exposed to this particularly often exactly because this is only possible at 20th level. You're already super broken and powerful even before that, don't get me wrong, but this particular, like the infinite health, like transformation glitch is only possible at 20th level. And so, but I like to play at high level. I like epic level kind of campaigns and one-shots and stuff. So I would allow this, but I would say, like, for this, I still would be like, you know what? You can't do the infinite, health transformation thing. I would have it function basically like the combat wild, or basically like the shape change spell, where it's like the first form that you turn into, like that's your max hit points. And if you drop below, if you wild shape again into something else, you don't get like more hit points. You don't reset your hit points. They stay at wherever it was when you first wild shaped at that point.
Yeah.
Like, because it just becomes just not even really fair. Like, unless they have enough damage to literally knock you out of your wild shape immediately. Because even then, only some of that is going to transfer over to your normal form. And then your next turn, you can just wild shape again. And then heal yourself on top of that. Like, so it's like, this thing is an absolutely busted. That's why so many people pick this subclass, because it is such a just like, hey, I'm basically immortal. Like, I cannot be killed. On
If you
top
can
of the
believe
fact,
it, I've never
like,
played with a Circle of the Moon Druid.
I
Not once in my 8 years of playing, we've never had someone pick Circle. I think we had someone who picked Circle of the Moon, and they lasted for all of one level during Curse of Strahd, and then they were killed. So
yeah.
the reality is like, and that, I don't really count that. We have not had a decently leveled Circle of the Moon
No,
Druid in any
that's
of
the
my
thing.
games.
This druid, like at lower levels, it ironically isn't like the it isn't the most amazing or crazy druid at lower levels. It's just like, hey, you're basically like a decent tank now. You're up there with the marshals for tanking this at this point. Because like you can turn into a bear at a pretty low level.
Yeah, you're
And
more of a
then
health tank than an AC.
yeah.
tank.
And you're not really going to because obviously in your wild shape form, your AC is going to be abysmal. It's going to be crap. Even as an elemental, most elementals ACs are pretty crap.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get hit, but again, at higher levels, it doesn't matter if you get hit because you can just keep healing and then transforming again. Like, at least again, unless of course you are taking the elemental wild shape, at which point you literally just you use up both your wild shapes immediately, and so you're just the elemental now. But again, you choose air elemental, you can just fly. You're just hovering now, and you have a crap ton of condition immunities. You have a decent amount of resistances as well now, and you can just literally fly and then like go down, attack somebody, fly away again. Like, but overall, like this class at lower level not going to be a huge thing because again, arguably you'll be more effective and helpful for the party at large casting spells in your normal druid form.
Yeah.
Like either healing or attacking with your
Or
spells.
battlefield control, because that's what they
Yeah.
say.
And it's like, so your wild shape again at lower levels isn't really great unless again, once you get a little higher up and you get like a higher, when you reach 6th level, then things maybe start to get a little bit different where you can become like certain creatures with like maybe specific like bonus effects, like either poison or like whatever else. And then you can start literally like, attacking things. You get magic, so you can now deal damage magically. So that becomes less of an issue too. But like, this class just allows you so much survivability. It's insane. And then at the end of it all, you just become basically a nigh immortal god. And again, it is a staple in the community for a reason. This is one of the originals. This is one of the original druid options as well. And it has withstood the test of time even more so than many others. Like, it's still a contender for, if not maybe the most busted subclass at the end of it all, to being one of the most busted for certain. But I do believe that overall. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And my zeal and my unmitigated rambunctious rambling, I forgot to even talk about the final capstone ability in this subclass at 14th level, mind you, 14th level. It's called 1,000 Forms, and there's a reason why I kind of glossed over it and didn't really mention it because it's pretty abysmal. You've learned to use magic to alter your physical form in subtle ways. You can cast the alter self spell at will. There you go. So you can cast alter self at will. You can see now why I didn't really even talk about it, because it's like, it's compared to what you will actually do later on at like your real true capstone level of 20. It's like, oh, okay, you can I guess disguise yourself at will now a bit physically. But sorcerers or wizards or other arcane casters can cast disguise self, which kind of arguably does it a little bit better, because you actually, like, while the physical inspection won't hold up, you have the visual thing where you just look different, like your clothing and everything, rather than just your physical body shifting and your clothes remain the same. But yeah, that now for sure this time is the full totality of the Circle of the Moon Druid. And again, y'all, if you want to do a Circle of the Moon Druid, just be aware, like I personally have played a Circle of the Moon Druid at lower levels. And yeah, again, it's okay, Like I didn't get a chance to do like a high 20th level one, but it's still fun. It's still cool. You know, you turn into beast and you start just ripping and tearing stuff, and it can be a fun time even with that too. But with that, let's go ahead and move on to our next subclass. Samuel, go ahead and take it away. What would you like to talk about?
I'm talking about the Swarm Keeper.
The
Swarm
Ranger.
One of the most recent editions.
I was going to say, this one now is the new. We talked about two
not,
OGs. This is one of the new boys.
I think this is one of the newest Ranger classes, along with Drake Warden.
It is.
So, feeling a deep connection to the environment around them, some Rangers reach out through their magical connection to the world and bond with a swarm of nature spirits. The swarm becomes a potent force in battle, as well as a helpful company for the Ranger. Some swarm keepers are outcasts or hermits, keeping to themselves and their attendant swarms rather than dealing with the discomfort of others. Other swarm keepers enjoy building vibrant communities that work for the mutual benefit of all those they consider part of their swarm. Now they talk about kind of like what your swarm looks like. The third level gathered swarm. A swarm of intangible nature spirits has bonded itself to you and can assist you in battle. While you're alive, the swarm remains in your space, crawling on you or flying and skittering around you within your space. You determine its appearance, or you generate its appearance by rolling on the swarm appearance table. Here are the options on the table, which you can also change.
Just make it your own, really.
Swarming insects, miniature twig blights, fluttering birds, or playful pixies. The idea of being followed by a bunch of tiny twig blights makes me very happy. Although the best choice is just bees, just lots of bees.
Yep. That's the one that always comes to my mind and bit. Like or like bugs. Like I get the idea from like have you ever seen Ninja Scroll, Sam?
Mm-hmm. No.
Ninja Scroll.
I've seen bits and pieces. I've never actually watched through the entirety of Ninja Scroll. I really should.
It's a great movie. It's one of the OG.
It's certainly a movie.
It's a good one. It's fun. Look, some people might have some. That was back in the day when like anime was being real edgy and crazy and just like, you know, it's very similar. I think I'm pretty sure the most recent anime that came out was like Ninja Kamui or whatever. Takes a lot of inspiration kind of from Ninja Scroll.
Yeah. On the action side of things, not so much the nudity one. But
I mean, well,
Ninja Scroll's from an older era of anime.
One that was much more explicit and you know, also maybe just
that still exists. You just have to.
I was gonna say it's still prevalent, but it's like again, Ninja Scroll, Ninja Scroll, Afro Samurai, like both of those were like but again, some of the animation for those
OG Berserk.
Dude, OG Berserk, the first initial Berserk.
OG, the 90s.
The golden age. They're calling it the golden age Berserk now, is I guess what they're calling it now.
That was so have you seen the 3 movies?
Yeah, I believe
I liked the movies because the movies was it was a retelling of the original series. It's a different era.
But specifically speaking, for the Ninja Scroll reference, like I just imagine there was literally a dude in Ninja Scroll who had bees like living inside of him. Like he had a whole swarm of bees like a literal hive in his back, and he would use them to he would call them out, and that is the image that comes to me whenever I think of like the Swarm Keeper. That or freaking Shino from Naruto.
I was really gonna say Shino from Naruto.
Shino from Naruto, same thing, as they literally have like both of them ninjas, and it's a very common trope for like there to be ninjas with like ninjutsu with insects where they live inside of them and they can like conjure them and stuff. And that is always the idea and the concept that I think of when I think of the Swarm Keeper.
The problem is if I played a Swarm Keeper, they'd be cicadas, which means everywhere I went, it would just be like
it would just be constant noise. God,
I love
good
cicadas.
Lord.
Hey, are you excited? We're getting the 17-year and the 13-year cicadas this summer.
Yep,
we're gonna have
it's going
the amount
to
of cicadas.
Be crazy. It only happens what do they say, every 7 years? More?
No, more because we get to see it once.
I was gonna say
there's the 26-year, there's the 26-year brood, the 22-year brood, the 13-year brood, and the 7-year brood. we are getting the 26 and 13-year broods at the same time.
Jesus.
So we're gonna
good
have 2 broods of the
Lord.
smaller red cicadas, which I'm very excited for.
Oh, are you? I'm so glad to hear that, bud.
You
Oh,
know me, I'm a
goodness.
bug guy.
You are a bug guy.
I love cicadas.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be out here. I'm gonna be out here driving that golf cart around, just covered in the motherfuckers.
It's gonna be so hard to
gonna
record with just the constant like
No,
the
it's gonna be
clicking
great.
and this is I mean
I love them so much.
it'll be maybe a night maybe I mean I'm sure they'll go asleep at night, so I'm gonna say like it would have been a nice like ambient background noise like maybe to sleep. We'll see.
We'll start
Either
recording.
way,
I'll just have one on me somehow. Yeah,
literally
yeah.
either way.
So you pick your bees or your cicadas or your twig blights,
or your
and they just and they're your best friends. They hang out with you. You can teach them tricks.
They are the best little boys and girls. They're just they're just the little guys. The little guys.
Now, here's what they get to do. Once on each of your turns, you can cause the swarm to assist you in one of the following ways immediately after you hit a creature with an attack. The attack's target takes 1d6 piercing damage from the swarm. The attack's target must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC or be moved by the swarm up to 15 feet horizontally in a direction of your choice, which does not specify it has to be in a place that can support them, which means
you can just knock them up. Or you can just lift them
horizontally.
Horizontally. Okay. It does say horizontally, you're right.
So just push them off a cliff or a bridge or a building.
What if you were directly below them, though?
It still has to be horizontal, which means this way.
It can't be vertical at all.
No.
Fine.
And then, or you can have yourself moved by the swarm 5 feet horizontally in a direction of your choice. Okay. Extra damage is cool. So here's my issue.
I mean, more maneuverability. Like,
when I play Ranger, my 2 most important abilities are Dex and Con. Now, the reason being is that I just don't use attack spells with Ranger very often because they're not very good. So your spell save DC is usually not the greatest, which is the only downfall for using the spell save DC for this. But we'll keep going. It's something I'm kind of like about, which is why I haven't played it.
I mean, it depends on how you build it. Yeah,
At 3rd level, you have Swarmkeeper Magic. You learn the Mage Hand cantrip if you don't already know it.
I just love this. I love this.
When you cast it, the hand takes the form of your swarming nature spirits.
Yeah, it's literally just like a swarm hand.
You also learn an additional spell of 1st level or higher when you reach certain levels in this class. At 3rd level Ranger, you can learn Fairy Fire and Mage Hand. At 5th level, you get Web. At 9th level, you get Gaseous Form. At 13th level, you get Arcane Eye. And at 17th level, you get Insect Plague.
Which very, very thematically appropriate,
What's awesome is that there's a tooltip at the beginning of this class. The Swarmkeeper's swarm and spells are reflections of the character's bond with nature spirits. Take the opportunity to describe your swarm and the ranger's magic in play. For example, when your ranger casts Gaseous Form, they might appear to melt into the swarm instead of a cloud of mist.
Amazing.
Or the Arcane Eye could create an extension of your swarm that spies for you. Such descriptions don't change the effects of the spells, but they are an exciting opportunity to explore your character's narrative through their class abilities. I love it. Now, all of these spells are pretty decent. Gaseous Form, Web, Arcane Eye, Fairy Fire, Insect Plague, they all have a place, which you don't usually get a set of bonus spells from a subclass where every single one of them is applicable at one point or another, and I do enjoy that. At 7th level, you get Writhing Tide, which is just such a great name for an ability.
Right? I love it. Like, again, the flavor that they put here is just, my lord.
Here it is. You can condense part of your swarm into a focused mass that lifts you up. As a bonus action, you gain a flying speed of 10 feet and can hover. This effect lasts for 1 minute or until you are incapacitated, which means 10 rounds of 10-foot flight.
Yeah.
Which means you can move 100 feet of flight, which out of combat, this also is helpful.
Yeah.
But you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest.
So I was gonna say, like, it depends obviously on how, if you want to go with more of a melee ranger or a ranged ranger, obviously, because like this in combat might not necessarily be as effective overall, like, because you might not, like, unless you are specifically melee. But even with melee, it's like if you can only move 10 feet around, unfortunately. So it's like this, in my opinion, really only is mostly effective out of combat, where you can just have like your swarm support you Literally like,
Technically, if you first turn attack someone, or like you just float up 10 feet, someone at 5 feet, like if a normal medium humanoid wouldn't be able to hit you in melee.
that's
So
true.
you can technically, this is usable because it's a bonus action,
Yep.
which
You're
is
not
great.
wrong. It definitely provides you some extra, again, versatility.
Because you can hover, there is definitely an excuse to be made that you would be
You
able
can't
to
be knocked
fire
prone.
normally. Yeah, it's normal flying, it's normal firing, which
Oh yeah, no,
huge.
you are hovering. I mean, and obviously, even if you're like flying with wings, technically speaking, like they are usually coming and you can use them more naturally. But normally, the hovering tag means that you cannot be knocked prone because you're not physically keeping yourself like aloft with like any kind of like aerodynamic. Like you are just there. You're just in the air. Like you cannot be knocked prone because you're hovering. And so in this case, obviously your bugs or whatever, your swarm are lifting you. But if you think about it, it's like if you're hit, your swarm will just catch you. Like it'll just be like, oh, and you'll just be on your back or upside down, like in the air, where
you're not prone.
Your swarm, your swarm is literally they are holding you and like keeping you from going anywhere.
It is a cool effect, and I think
and
it can be.
it's absolutely applicable to a number of different situations, which I
will
love.
say this is definitely more on the side of a ranged hunter.
Yeah.
Things like Beast, Monster Slayer, Hunter, Gloomstalker, they also are very good in melee combat. I would say Stormkeeper is definitely more of a ranged.
I think obviously if you want to, maximize your effectiveness or whatever, usually Swarmkeeper definitely, like Sam said, much more on the range side of things. Because again, this would absolutely be incredibly helpful in combat and range because you just literally you just fly up. And you don't want to be attacked. You just literally just
you can't melee attack me. But
so
it's awesome, and this is at 7th level, which is a pretty decent time. There's not going to be a whole lot of flying stuff you're going to be dealing with at this level comparatively to higher level. It's good. I like it a lot.
At 7th level, he might throw some flying stuff at you, or more range things. But
not everything.
But there are a lot of melee stuff too, so it's still helpful.
Well, you kind of just have to rely on your melee fighters in your party to kind of pin down their range
to take the aggro. But usually, if you see a ranged fighter who isn't capable of being attacked at melee, normally ranged combatants will then be like, all right, range off, here we go, and
But it's still, if you're playing in a team, you might be able to use this to your advantage quite handedly.
Mm-hmm.
But at 11th level, you get Mighty Swarm. Your gathered swarm grows mightier in the following ways. The damage of gathered swarm increases to a D8 instead of a D6. If a creature fails its saving throw against being moved by gathering swarm, you can also cause the swarm to knock the creature prone.
That's great.
When you are moved by gathering swarm, it gives you half cover until the start of your next turn.
That's awesome.
Now, what you can do with this is you hit someone with an attack, and all you do is you go, okay, and now you move yourself another 5 feet.
5 feet away.
Horizontally, of course, but you're already floating.
Yep.
And now you have half cover. So now everybody who's shooting at you, which they mostly won't have sharpshooter, you have what half cover is a
half cover is +2 to your AC.
That's huge.
3/4 cover is +5.
But imagine now you have for all intents and purposes, every turn you hit an attack, you can give yourself a +2 to your AC, and you're in the air. So really, people would have to shoot you down because I'll put it this way: if you're 20 feet to 40 feet above the ground, most of the time, no one's throwing area of effect spells at you. They're throwing attacks or attack roll spells.
I mean, if
now
it's
have
a
bonus
sphere,
to
they can maybe like aim it to like hit.
But if you're high enough, they're not going to just target you. So if you stay away and up, most of the time you're going to be dealing with things that go against your AC, and being able to add a free 2 to your AC every round,
nothing to sneeze at all.
Is huge.
Like that's the thing. It costs you nothing but an attack. Like you're just attacking anyway. So
you're already doing that.
Yeah. So it costs you nothing. And now obviously you have to hit a creature. So you can't do it if you don't hit a creature specifically. But it specifically is just an attack. Any attack. Range, melee, hell, even spell technically attack would count. So it's like at this level, and this is 11th level. It's not even your capstone ability yet. That is just badass.
Yeah, we like it a lot. And then finally, swarming dispersal at level 15. You can
Discorporate.
discorporate. I don't think that's a word.
It is.
Into your
It is.
swarm. No. Into your swarm, avoiding danger. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to give yourself resistant to that damage. You vanish into your swarm and then teleport to an unoccupied space that you can see within 30 feet of you, where you reappear within the swarm. You can use this feature of number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This
Misty
is cool.
Step. It's a reaction Misty Step ability that
Which
you also
also
get
gives you
resistance to damage. Yep.
This is huge.
Or at least to that damage, we should say. Any damage you receive.
Yeah, it's awesome because that literally means you can gain resistance to anything.
Yep.
It doesn't
even
have
force
to be
damage, thunder damage, psychic damage, which doesn't make any sense, but maybe it's like you're dispersing your mental faculties amongst all of your your swarm so that they can help take some of the stress off your mind or something. Maybe I like that. Yeah, that works. Sure.
But it's really good, and it's one of those things that, like, you know, this class doesn't have a lot to augment like extra damage or things like that, and it's definitely going to rely on magic weapons and things to really get your damage going. But the reality is that it has a lot of some survivability aspects.
I was going to say the survivability / maneuverability or control of the battlefield is exponential. Like, yeah, and that's, you know, again, you might not be, like Sam said, especially even as a ranger, you're not going to be dealing the highest amount of damage here, but you got a lot of options for support and control, which can exponentially change the entire vibe energy of the combat depending on when you apply it. As well as, yeah, the survivability is huge. Your ability to just float, you know, and hover for basically what's going to be most often a full combat. Most combats are not going to go longer than 10 rounds. Like, unless there's like really terrible rolling or an enemy has a lot of health and you're not rolling well, like,
you can do it again.
You can. You
give yourself the flying speed again.
Proficiency bonus, so you can keep doing it, obviously, as a bonus action, like right before it ends. But even then, like I said, that's most likely not ever going to be the case most of the time.
Also, like, rangers don't have a huge amount of bonus action economy. They're not,
besides just like, you know, hunter's mark, and then it's just concentration at that point. So
yeah, but the reality is like,
or maybe hex.
Well, no, it's hunter's mark.
I mean, hex is better though. If you can learn hex, you might as well just use hex.
I guess if you could take magic and
Eldritch, Eldritch Adept or whatever. No,
but like the reality is that you don't have a lot of things that are going to be using your bonus action anyway. Aside from that first turn where you're like setting up hunter's mark, or
you have a number of spells. To be fair, I think Swift Quiver also is one.
But that's only
Zephyr Strike. So
yeah, but being able to, you know, in 2 turns set up extra damage or extra attacks, and then also being able to float around is pretty huge. Your swarm helping you out doesn't take any action economy. It's just you attacking.
Yep.
Anyway,
just successfully hitting them.
Yeah, it's
yeah, I definitely want to play as one. I think it'd be really cool to play as like a beekeeper, or even just like just a bug keeper of some sort or whatever, and they're just like literally they emanate out of you like Shino from Naruto, which is cool. Well, I do believe, unless anything else you have to say about this subclass, Sammy.
No, I think it's a well-written subclass.
I agree. I think that this gets the official Arcane Archive stamp of approval.
I haven't tested it. That's kind of my main thing.
I mean, it definitely it looks like it has a vast amount of potential. And honestly, again, mostly just from the RP and the flavor standpoint is what I love. Like, again, mechanically speaking, like we already stipulated, it's not going to be probably the biggest or flashiest kind of thing overall. Just mechanics wise, but the load of like RP potential this thing has, where you can just have like a literal swarm of little creatures just around you to do stuff. Like, again, the mage hand, you just have like an insect or a little creature mage hand that can grab stuff for you. You can play with them. Like, it can be like a really fun, interesting like interaction and stuff. And I would allow a certain, I think, freedom of like kind of like swarm interaction with just the outside world, not necessarily just you, like, because it's cool. But overall, in terms of just like, and I will say though, I still think that we maybe broke a little bit of the mold here for our subclass discussions, where Sam genuinely picked, two pretty good subclasses. They might not be considered the best of the best. They might be a little mediocre in certain aspects and ways, but they still have things about them that make them shine exponentially, even amongst, the mechanic, domination of other subclasses. But we still take that 100%. But you know what? With that, let's go ahead and move on, I think, to our last subclass that we will be discussing for the day. And once again, this is going to be a subclass that is like, there's a bit of, maybe not controversy, but there's a bit of a discussion and debate about this particular subclass and its viability and application, as opposed to like everybody's desires and wishes for what it really could be or what they want it to be. And this subclass is going to be the Rogue Assassin subclass. Once again, I believe only the Swarmkeeper was the only one. This is one of the OG subclasses from back in the day for Rogue. Again, along with Arcane Trickster and Thief, Assassin was one of the first. And it was a hella popular because of the three. Like, again, it literally has the name. And who doesn't want to be an assassin at some point? Who doesn't like have that vibe of just wanting to be like, again, if you've ever played or seen Assassin's Creed or like any other like dope games like that, like even kind of like Metal Gear Solid or like anything else where you feel like a cool, badass, dope finesse, like, mother effer, the assassin class garnered a ton of attention in the early days. However, as people began to kind of play it more, especially when new subclasses were introduced, you began to kind of see a little bit of a something there that left a bit to be desired. And we'll get into that in a moment. But for now, Assassin. You focus your training on the grim art of death. Those who adhere to this archetype are diverse: hired killers, spies, bounty hunters, and even specially anointed priests trained to exterminate the enemies of their deity. Stealth, poison, and disguise help you eliminate your foes with deadly efficiency. At third level, when you choose this archetype, you gain bonus proficiencies. You gain proficiency with the Disguise Kit and the Poisoner's Kit. Now, both of those things, well, I should say one of those things isn't bad. Disguise Kit, certainly not a bad thing at all to have. Like, I will say, unfortunately, for a lot of the tool proficiencies of your trade, one of the biggest issues that I take with the tool proficiency stuff is it is highly dependent on your GM allowing time to be able to use these things. Like, it is highly dependent on that, which is a little annoying in my opinion, because it's just like a lot of it takes a little bit of time. And we talked about this a little bit before too in a number of other episodes, where it's like most of this in at least just vanilla D&D requires you to take a lot of downtime for it to be applicable. Whereas in my opinion, I'm always like, for this stuff, I'm always of the mind, you have to, if you're the GM, you really gotta kind of maybe talk with or work with the players to come up with a more streamlined homebrew version of that to like make these things more applicable.
I think there is also, and this is, you can say if you disagree with me or not. I think if you're going to play an assassin, having things like, knowing what the Disguise Kit and Poisoner's Kit can do, just kind of on your radar in general, is a good thing. Do some research on your own and just let your DM know, like, hey, short rests and long rests, you're not always spending that time doing nothing. And in my opinion, fucking around with some vials or, figuring out a recipe is something that you can also do over rests.
I was going to say, like,
because you already have the baseline knowledge, you're proficient in the kits. Depending on your background, depending on, how long your character's been alive, you might know some basic stuff that would maybe allow you to be like, hey,
I would say,
can I do this while we're doing a short rest? Can I get some work done while we're doing a long rest that other people are doing shit, or I'm just sitting here because we're taking, watch turns on watch and stuff like that. Like, can I spend some time doing these things? And I guarantee you most DMs, if they're good to decent DMs, they will let you get some of that stuff done and you'll be able to incorporate this more into your character. but you have to ask. You have to be.
You always
proactive.
have to be communicative. You always have to be communicative and interactive, and like Sam said, proactive. But honestly, Sam, even to what you were saying, I would even submit even more so that because your subclass is literally assassin,
Yeah.
that you should be able to have even more proficiency and like ability to do these things, maybe even in a faster way. This is what you do. You are literally been trained and have practiced for however long to become like this is your thing. So you should even above other people who have proficiency with these toolkits or whatever. I think you should be allowed to have even more like, and not necessarily even like expertise. I think that would be fine too, I guess. But I would say like, again, just in your ability to apply the effects of these toolkits, like, yeah, come up. You should already know at this point some easy to make potions that you have. You just need to make sure that you have, you keep on you a decent amount of the ingredients required. Disguise kits, especially as you get lower, like or higher in this level or in this subclass, it should be even more applicable that you're able to more quickly and easily disguise yourself. And you know what? On that level or on that note, let us continue forward. Unless, do you have something else that you want to say real quick, Sam?
Well, what I was going to say is the idea, you play an assassin, you have a friend play a druid, and your whole thing is you work together to
infiltrate,
find and grow herbs to create poisons.
So
too. Druids and some other casters, some clerics as well, like a nature
ranger.
Cleric. Less so, but I would say nature cleric and any druid, they're gonna have opportunities of like helping you grow
plants.
To
they
make
have
poisons.
druid craft to like literally conjure, herbs.
Just plant growth, which is a weird spell. It doesn't
That's
necessarily say how it works.
Yeah,
but like plant growth says, oh well, I can take this area and overgrow it to where it's difficult terrain. But the reality is, it doesn't specify what it's overgrowing. So if you plant a bunch of saplings of like some sort of poisonous plant, cast plant growth on this area, the only thing that's there to grow is poisonous plants.
Yeah.
So while there might be some random vines or thorny stalks, there's going to be a lot of stuff to harvest. And if rogues, one of the things rogues you want to have is some intelligence for investigation checks. Now,
well, also you have a save. Intelligence is one of your proficient saves.
But for me, if I was going to play assassin, I would pick up, if I could, nature proficiency. Being able to tell what's poisonous or not, and being able to help like harvest these things. Yes, it would take maybe working with somebody else. It would take some other stuff, but like the reality is like.
I mean, here's what I will say about that. If you don't necessarily want to use one of your selects for your skills for nature, I would still say like your proficiency in a poisoner's kit would still allow you to have that knowledge of like, more venomous, poisonous, ingredients, plants, herbs, or other things like that. I think your proficiency with your poisoner's kit could substitute for having, nature specifically, to be fair. Again, that's kind of the issue, right? One of the biggest aspects of this subclass is a lot of like the things that could make it better and what it obviously like should be or what people want it to be requires you, similar to like the Drunken Master monk, requires you to kind of get a little bit freer and a little bit more liberal with certain rules and applications or guidelines or whatever, and that's again one of the issues with this subclass. But you know what, let's keep going. The other ability that you get at 3rd level, which again, you're going to use this your entire time. It's literally the staple of your subclass, Assassinate. You are at your deadliest when you get the drop on your enemies. You have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn in the combat yet. In addition to that, any hit you score against a creature that is surprised is a critical hit. So, here's the thing, right? You're a rogue. Rogues are one of the classes that you are always looking to try and fish for them crits. You are looking for any ability to get those critical hits because you will do absolute insane bonkers nutty damage if you can crit with your sneak attack. And obviously this is exactly for that. Obviously one of the issues with this ability is it only works once a combat, which is I kind of, I guess, their intention. and that, you know, they wanted to make this like a, oh yeah, you know, assassinate and then it's the one and done kind of thing. And but another problem with it is though is that it can a lot of the time not even be applicable at all, depending on what you rolled for initiative. Like, obviously, this works perfect if you're able to get surprise rounds on enemies, right? Another issue with that, though, is that there are a number of GMs that won't run surprise rounds. Like, a number of people don't believe in having a surprise round, even though it's like, well, I get the drop on them, though, yet. Like, being surprised is literally a thing in the game. And this class is highly reliant on it for literally their hallmark staple ability. And so you have a lot of moments and instances where you're just like, okay, how do I apply this then if you don't believe in the concept or the application of surprise rounds or surprise, like, how can I even use this ability that is the bread and butter of this subclass?
Yeah.
Along with the fact that, again, you just, don't get me wrong, as a rogue, you're going to be rolling decently for initiative, right? Your dex is going to be high. But at most, unless you have something else to help supplement it, the highest you'll get a bonus in your initiative is 5. Because you're going to, at max...
That's why you take alert or whatever.
Well, that's what I mean. Unless you have a feature or a feat. But my problem is with that is like, if you have an ability that is literally dependent on whether or not a creature, you go first initiative, why doesn't it have something like the freaking Swashbuckler does to actually give it bonuses to its initiative?
I was going to say, like, technically, this assassinate can be used in a different way, where you're now the initiator. So
that's what I mean. That's getting a surprise round, basically.
Yeah. Well,
that is being the surprise.
Even if a DM doesn't necessarily do surprise round as like a whole round, in my opinion, and
if you hit them first before initiative is rolled,
if there is no initiative, you sneak up behind somebody. You put your first instinct is to walk up right behind someone. They do not notice you. You cover their mouth and stab them through the heart. They are surprised, which means you have advantage, and you get an auto crit with assassinate. You would auto crit, surprise, sneak attack. So, to me, that is for all intents and purposes.
I would agree.
You can fuck up one dude real bad.
Well, that's the thing. It's even when it usually works, it's unfortunately usually a one and done, which isn't always a bad thing, but it really falls off when you are facing a powerful single enemy, right? Like a dragon, right? Most of the time, unfortunately, like, again, if you don't go first in that if you don't get the drop on the dragon, which is going to be exponentially difficult because they have blind sight out to a range of like 60 feet, depending on how powerful they are. They have, you know, super high perception, but you're a rogue. Hopefully you took expertise in stealth. So at that point, hopefully you are also relatively skilled and powerful. So you have a chance of sneaking up on a dragon, because even if they have blind sight, if you are hidden from them, if you are successfully hidden, they still can't necessarily see you. But barring that, if you are just engaged, if they're aware of you before you have a chance and you get into a fight and they roll higher than you, your assassinate is essentially done. You don't even get to use your most powerful feature. Now you basically have lost. And that's one of the things about this subclass in a lot of ways. Not just even assassinate. There are the other abilities too, or some of them function in a very similar capacity, and that's just, you're right, but it's, you know. But speaking of which, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. That being at 9th level, you get the ability known as Infiltration Expertise. You can unfailingly create false identities for yourself. You must spend 7 days and 25 gold to establish the history, profession, and affiliations for this identity. You can't establish an identity that belongs to someone else. For example, you might acquire appropriate clothing, letters of introduction, and official-looking certification to establish yourself as a member of a trading house from a remote city, so you can insinuate yourself into the company of other wealthy merchants. Thereafter, if you adopt the new identity as a disguise, other creatures believe you to be that person until given an obvious reason not to. So, once again, one of the biggest, again, flaws of this subclass is the high dependency on downtime or extended time to plan and do all this stuff. Like, it literally, 7 days
Mm-hmm.
to do this is like, that's, it's like, and it says unfailingly,
Yeah.
but another issue is that certain GMs might not just take that at face value, right? They'll argue with you and be like, well, how do you do that? How do you like get all that stuff in this situation? It's like, well, because my ability says that I can. Like, I guess I have the ability to have, like, if I spend 7 days, that clearly means that I'm like, I have contacts, I have resources to be able to expend to do all of this, to
Well,
get this stuff, to
I would
establish
say
myself. Like,
if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, you're in the middle of a forest somewhere and there's not really society around, as a DM, I'd say maybe you can't do this right now. But the reality is, it says you must spend 7 days and 25 gold. It doesn't say how much of the day you have to spend doing this. So, in my opinion, if you are in a big city or a town that has some form of network, whether it's postage, a local thieves guild, whatever, you would be able to do this over the course of a week while doing other things, as long as you spend that money. And the reality is, you're not posing as someone that already exists. You're posing as a new person entirely. If you're coming into a game at this level, you'd already probably have one or two of these lined up, because these also aren't.
they're not temporary. They are
Yeah.
they are permanent, unless again someone gives an obvious reason to see through it.
But
Like,
like, even then, it's so the whole point of this is to create an identity. You don't use it all the time. So as a professional assassin, I have one, two, three extra identities that I can, with the required materials, which obviously you have to have a place to keep all this shit, whether it's a bag of holding or your friend's bag of holding or a home base of sorts. But you could have sets of disguises and outfits
that's what a
and
disguise
items.
kit is. A
Yeah.
disguise kit is literally that. You
Yeah.
have those
Well, but
resources.
disguise kit doesn't give you like whole new sets of clothes.
I
A
think you
disguise
get
kit
I think you get 2 sets of clothing, actually 2
in a
costumes, I
disguise,
think.
yeah. So
I can
whatever the
check just to
disguise
be
kit
sure real
says,
quick.
but the reality is, like, this is something that you do, and it's just there. You might not use it then, but like having an alter ego, create a guy that would be invited to parties like of the higher upper echelon, or wouldn't look out of place in places like that. Create some, having these things, it's something you have to think out ahead of time, which is kind of why it's a 7-day 25 gold piece investment, because just being able to do it is a little weird, in my opinion. It's hard because
I mean, I don't think it should be.
downtime economy sucks. We've
That's what I'm
discussed this.
saying. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like you can do it immediately, but I also feel like, again, the issue being a 7 days is also, that's like an eternity in D&D campaign time in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
if it was just like a day or two, maybe like 3 days even.
I
Like,
think if I was a
cut
DM
it cut it in half. Maybe you could increase the gold cost, maybe.
yeah,
To like, but like, the
if I
time is the biggest issue. The gold
yeah.
cost would be less so if it was just like, okay, you can do this in 3 days and it costs 200, maybe 500 gold, something like that, maybe. And it would be like, okay, that's a little bit more manageable, especially if you got like a big kind of like ball or gala coming up that about ahead of time, and you're like, okay, yeah. But 7 days, especially with the thing, like, it's like, unless you again choose as a group to just like time skip 7 days, it's like nobody necessarily even has all the rest of that stuff planned out. Like, what is your character going to do for 7 days right now? Like, unless you're like, okay, maybe I'll train for maybe an attribute increase, or maybe I'll, like, if I have a book that I have to read for like a long time or something, like maybe then. But it's like, I will say too, I just looked at the disguise kit. You don't actually get costumes for the disguise kit. It is a pouch of cosmetics, hair dye, and small props to let you disguise your physical appearance. I think it was specifically the actor background or something that gave you costumes.
You need a place to store this stuff. I would say, like, if I was DMing a game and someone's like, I wanted to play an assassin, I want to be able to use this feature, like, what can we do here? If we're playing in a game where there just isn't going to be that kind of downtime for storytelling reasons or whatever, like, you as a DM and as a player, you need to work together to figure out how this
That's
can
what I'm
still be
saying.
usable, because it's not fair.
You gotta, like, it's always the most shitty, like, asinine, like, sour mouthed feeling when you have an ability or a feature that just doesn't work, right? That you just cannot use. It's like, it looks cool. You have an idea, it looks cool, and you're like, oh, I would love to do this. And the game, the situation of the game or the current circumstance of the game are not allowing it, you know? And it's like Sam said, at that point, yeah, like GMs, you gotta work with your players to give them the opportunity to use this stuff. Because it's like, again, there's nothing worse than the feeling of being like, I took this subclass because it looked cool. I was interested in doing this stuff. And then you just don't ever get to do anything or use it. Like, that just sucks, dude. Like, that just sucks.
But I think you can work around it. It's definitely something that's workable, especially
Yeah,
if you talk to your DM and you know what, if they like, I would say bring this up when you choose what you're going to play.
I would agree
at the beginning and be like, if you're not going to let me do this, I'm going to pick something else.
But the problem is, a lot of the time, especially at the beginning, new players would pick this, and they don't understand a lot of what can go on and happen in a campaign. The most, what you mostly expect. Again, 7 days, like, oh, it's 7 days, 25 go, okay, whatever. That doesn't seem like, because they don't understand. Like, again, 7 days in a D&D campaign is a literal eternity. Like, you are almost never going to be just like, and I absolutely love your suggestion, Sam, about being like, hey, you don't have to spend the entire 7 days just doing this. Even though a lot of people might interpret it that way, because they're like, this is the resource cost. You have to spend all 7 days and 25 gold to make this happen. I also would be like, if you guys are going to stay here for an extended period of time, yeah, you do not have to spend the whole day doing this. You can do other things, because otherwise, but that therein though lies the issue, right? The fact that we or GMs and players have to try and work or tweak it at all shows that there is a bit of an issue and a lot to be desired from it. Continuing on, this next ability is kind of similar in a way where it's like, at 13th level, you gain the ability known as Imposter. And this grants you the ability to unerringly mimic another person's speech, writing, and behavior. You must spend at least 3 hours studying these 3 components of the person's behavior, listening to speech, examining handwriting, and observing mannerisms. Your ruse is indiscernible to the casual observer. If a wary creature suspects something is amiss, you have advantage on any charisma deception check you make to avoid detection. Now, again, 3 hours observing an individual to copy these mannerisms. I do believe the newest, or not newest, I'm sorry. I do believe that the newer subclass for Bard, College of Whispers, they can just do this easy. Like, they can just magically do shit like this. Which, yeah, it is magic, to be fair. But still, the fact that it's like, again, 3 hours? Like, why 3? Why? Just make it 1 hour. Do it like over the course of like a short rest where you're able to like copy and mimic a person. Like, why 3? Why did you make it 3 hours? Like, you're gonna have.
So I will say this. I think the reason, I think they chose the wrong amount of time, but I think the goal of this ability was you have to interact or study this person a couple times before you can get all of it down.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, for me personally, if someone said, "Oh, I want to use the imposter ability," okay, you could use the imposter ability on someone you've had a conversation with 3 times. 4 times, but it can't just be a, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good, and then you don't talk anymore.
No.
You have to have 3 real conversations with somebody. There has to be role play. There has to be interaction, or
even
someone that you watch. So say you're trying to imitate like a guard, a specific guard, or an official.
to mimic a guard. Like,
okay, now you follow him around for an hour or so on his watch while he's talking to his buddies and talking to civilians, and you just kind of shadow them and listen and study it for a bit. And you know what? If you went and got a set of guard armor and put it on and did your face up a little bit, I would totally allow you to imitate this dude. It would not be, it's not that hard.
I mean, here's the problem though, too, with that, though, is like the actor feat literally does that with a minute. You can literally mimic the speech of another or the sounds of others. You just have to literally have heard that person or creature speak for 1 minute.
Yeah, but what else does the actor feat get you?
You have advantage on charisma deceptions checks when trying to pass yourself off as a different person. So you technically, the actor feat just gives you this at literally almost half the time. Or even if you're like specifically just like, oh, hey, I don't even have to necessarily mimic them, you still just get permanent advantage when trying to pass yourself off as a different person just the
Yeah.
entire time.
So
Like
this
you
one's
just get that.
worded separately. This one is you're indiscernible until you have to lie.
But
So
even
it's like two sides of the same coin. I
but
don't
the I
I
feel
don't
but
want
here,
to take
okay,
away from
here's
either.
here's the issue though. Here's the problem, right?
Yeah.
What would I feel like again, if they you either have to be indiscernible, like there is almost no way for them to be able to detect you apart from maybe like magic, which at which point doesn't even require you to like make a check to deceive them because they just know somehow, or you have to be able to do it quicker, and therefore that leaves room for a person to be able to like obviously unless of because like I would even say for instance, right? You're mimicking this person perfectly. You like were able to disguise yourself as them with the disguise kit. That person comes into the room, right? It's the two of you there, right? Now, at that point, it's like, okay, maybe. But then even then, still, you're kind of just like, all right, I can make a deception check now because I guess they know that's an obvious thing that something's up. But then it's like, okay, does the other person then get would they get
Okay.
disadvantage on
All right.
persuading? Like,
All right. So here's the main difference of these two things. You are physically indiscernible. The actor feat does not allow you to do that. The
true.
actor feat is different. This is a whole nother level of being an imposter.
I would agree.
And
I
to
would
me,
agree. I would like that
I
to be
would
the
give
case.
it the chops it deserves.
But
Now,
that would be dependent on the GM is the problem.
100%.
Because I absolutely believe that a vast modicum or a vast majority of GMs, excuse me, would still be being like, okay, make deception checks, make deception checks, make deception checks for the same amount that it would be if you were just the actor and you disguised yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
And because that's the problem. It's like, again, it says unerringly. So it's like, well, yeah, so it's like again, I'm indiscernible to the casual observer. It's like,
but like
well,
their best friend might pick up on something.
is very well. But that's the point being. It's like, okay, you should still be though unerringly accurate, unless
Also,
again there is an obvious thing, like because the GM can then just make the proclamation. Well, this creature is particularly wary or paranoid or just aware, and you're like, okay, well then you might as well have just taken the actor feat anyway and then just been making checks at advantage the whole time with far less of the time resource put towards it.
I will also say the main difference here as well is with imposter, you are mimicking their speech, writing, and behavior.
And mannerisms.
Mannerisms. Whereas the actor feat, it's not necessarily what you're doing. So the reality is like if I had a player that said, oh, I have the actor feat, I'm going to mimic somebody, but they don't pay attention to how that person acts and they just kind of act as themselves, but they're pretending to be someone else, that people are going to fall for that. But the reality is if I take time, observe someone close up, and actually learn the normal things they do every day, to me, you're going to fool a lot more people. Now, I'm not the DM of all DMs, but we've talked about this because we both would give this the respect it deserves.
Agreed.
Look, the reality is the argument that most GMs won't rule this the way it's supposed to be ruled goes for about 200 other things in this game. That is tabletop RPGs to a T. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. The way that they wrote this, including things like behavior, listening to speech, writing,
it's clearly supposed to incorporate RP aspects heavily, which I love. A lot flavor more in RP, which I do love.
To me, it may not say, hey, you get an advantage doing this one certain thing, but the reality is you shouldn't even have to make checks.
That's what
most of the stuff you're doing.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you shouldn't even have to unless there's something very obvious.
Which is why I think it specifies that the only thing you get advantage on is your charisma deception check to dissuade someone not believing your ruse. Because there is no reason for the average person to even think you're somebody else. That's how good this is, right? Is that the only thing it needs to give you advantage on is the fact that you're lying about who you are. And that's only when someone is very wary of it, which, to be fair, I'm sure there's some DMs out there will be like, make deception checks, whatever, even though technically a check is supposed to go for 20 minutes once you make it. But the reality is like, you should barely be having to make checks unless it's against some sort of fucking archmage or cult leader that you're trying to, get information on by joining, shit like that, where it's people who have like unnerving abilities to like discover
I
lies
mean,
or
yeah,
see through
yeah, that's what
the
I'm saying.
illusions of the
If
world.
they have like an actual thing or some
Well,
like
there's
equally like skillful ability to discern
yeah,
lies or things,
I'm sure
it's like fair.
I'm sure there's some sort of magic item that allows you to see through disguises,
Well, obviously,
shit like that.
I mean, maybe magic disguises, or even again, maybe just to tell if somebody is lying. There are certain things or abilities that you just can tell. It just lets you know that someone is lying. But normally, again, a lot of that is magic. Now, some of that may not always be. Some of it might just be, again, equal skill, right? Because this is skill, so you got game recognized game, right?
Yeah.
And like somebody else, if somebody else is that particularly good at observation, then maybe. But again, those people should be just as rare as you are.
Yeah, and to be fair, in a normal game, I'd say that is the case. In a vast majority of the games I played, I'd say meeting someone who is just as good at being insightful and finding lies as is our best liar in the party is just as rare. Now, again, if you're a good DM, and I stress this, as a DM, as a GM, even as a player, read what these abilities are, even for your friends in the group, because things like this, imposter is one of those things that if someone just like looks at it real quick, they're not going to understand the gravity of what this allows you to do, because it's not an attack roll or a spell or an ability that affects something very directly and very specifically. This is a kind of open-ended,
It's much more its own thing.
interpreted.
It's not an umbrella. It's not under an
It's a
umbrella
concept.
kind of thing.
It's
Literally,
more of a concept.
3 hours, like it's like that. Again, that's completely different normal thing. It's mostly 1 hour, 8 hours
10
or
minutes,
whatever, 10 minutes,
or
1
it's
minute,
an
or an action, or a bonus
Yeah.
action. 3 hours is its own, like, so it's like, that's what I'm saying though. It's just like so much of it is, it requires you to have to pay much more attention, and most people will not. And that's the issue that I have with it, and that and not only if you do pay more attention to it, and you communicate with your GM where you're just like, this is what it says. But the problem being is most people in GM, they want to keep it more. So they're just like, well, I mean, but how can you, like, again, if they know this person, it's like, but I'm literally unerringly mimicking their speech, writing, and behavior. So like, again, I spent literally 3 hours learning all of this stuff immaculately. This is what I do. And so if you're just asking me literally to constantly make deception checks anyway, then it wouldn't have mattered. I could have just taken the actor feat, and it would at least been far less of a whole investment and a whole thing that I had to do. If I'm doing the same thing, I'm making it at advantage anyway. That's all I'm doing. And I like and so the problem is the ability is like, if it can be almost undercut or replaced potentially by how it is enforced by just a feat, where you're just like, or a spell, or just like whatever, you're just like, well, that it demoralizes you to take the class, because you're just like, well, all right.
I also think this is something that, like, if you took the actor feat as well, or you had some sort of other way to magically augment yourself in like how you look, you could be a menace. And
I would hope so. Like I
like,
would be like, bro.
Again, the one downfall is that the best abilities of this class, are at the beginning and the end. So you kind of have to invest all the way if you want to be an assassin rogue. So like multi-classing assassin with something else doesn't really work very well.
I mean, it does with the initial 3rd level, because again, your assassinate is still going to be highly like, again, if you like, like freaking what's another class that gets huge bonuses? Like if you multi-class like assassin and like gunslinger fighter, like you could be an absolute menace. Like just like, and again, to be fair, because you're lower level with assassinate or your rogue, you're not going to get like a shit ton of like, sneak attack. So you still maybe do want to like invest a bit more to get that sneak attack damage up. But
can I just say you take assassin and samurai, where you can get guaranteed sneak attacks every round with your automatic attack like advantage.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Well, if you as a samurai sneak up and hit somebody, you're gonna crit anyway, and you'll have
and you get multiple attacks on top of that.
So there's some ways to do this. I think assassin is to me, it's a pretty decent standalone class. The issue is like, there's a certain point where multiclassing to something else, I think, actually ekes you out in a better way than going all the way. But to me, like, if you use these abilities right, you have a decent DM who actually listens to you, and you actually strategize and plan things out. These can be pretty helpful in a campaign that's not just fighting. In a campaign that has roleplay,
I was gonna say that's another thing.
intrigue and exploration.
It's highly dependent on how much RP and like interaction your
like
GM introduces. Because again, it's like that's why the 7 days. It's like ain't nobody got time for 7 days.
100%. Like, don't play an assassin in a hex crawl exploration.
Yeah, a dungeon crawler, a hack and slash kind of thing.
No, play a scout. Play scout. Play thief.
Yeah.
Play swashbuckler.
Arcane. Yeah, swashbuckler would be probably the best for that.
You know, any of these ones that
psychic knife, psi knife.
Yeah, something that isn't just about doing this. But like, if you're playing an intrigue heavy, campaign that's going to be based in a city where you have to talk to people and actually interact with a bunch of NPCs, then yeah, this is something that would be viable 100%. I'd say more viable than Thief overall.
I mean, yeah, or at least it could be. Like,
because you know what? Well, the cool thing about Assassin, you don't need a bunch of magic items. You're good at the shit anyway. Would magic items help immensely?
Oh, yeah. They always do. There's no question. They always do.
Always.
Get a crazy, again, dagger, short sword, or rapier. Yeah. And you will decimate at least one person a combat. But you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's move on to their final capstone ability at 17th level, which again, that's high. That is high, and you are often not gonna get there for it. But it is cool. Death Strike is what this ability is called, and you become a master of instant death. When you attack and hit a creature that is surprised, it must make a Constitution saving throw equal to 8 plus your Dexterity modifier plus your proficiency bonus, which is great. I love that they actually use the primary stat that you are using as a thing for this ability. On a failed save, you instantly double the damage of your attack against the creature. So, what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is you will literally quadruple the damage that you deal to a creature that you have surprised. So long, of course, as they fail the saving throw, the con save, of course. You'll still just double the damage, you'll still just crit. But if they fail a con save, you will then quadruple the damage because you double it for your automatic crit for surprising them. And then if they fail the save, you then double that again. So you are effectively quadrupling the damage, and at 17th level, and let me just fucking look at this.
Well, no, this is a quick question I have, because a crit doubles the dice.
That's true.
Right? This double the damage. So what you would do is you'd roll your crit.
Well, I will say it depends on what you do, because the crits technically, but like you can double the damage too.
Rules is written, right? We'll say for the sake of argument, you roll a crit. You have, let's say, 8d6 for sneak attack and a d6 for your weapon. Whatever it is. What's it, 17th?
Yeah, 17th level, you have 96.
Okay, I was one off.
That's you're one off. You're pretty close. Jesus Christ. You're pretty damn close. Right,
so you have 9d6 plus another d6 for your normal weapon. So you have 10. You do 10 d6 of damage. You double the dice, so now you're rolling 20 d6. You roll total damage, add your modifiers and your bonuses, and then you double that. So you are doubling 20 d6 plus your pluses to your attack.
So probably +5 for.
So it's more than that. It's more than 4 times damage because you're also doubling modifiers and things of that nature.
That is true.
You're not just doubling the dice again. You're doubling total damage.
You could technically quad it, which would be because you can either double dice or just you roll the dice and you double the damage either way. So it's like depending, obviously.
But you're only doubling the damage on the dice, not your modifier damage or whatever have you. Yes. So say you do this with a bow and you have sharpshooter. You're also doubling sharpshooter damage. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is crazy. You could do
if you can successfully execute this and they fail the save.
I mean, that's 40 d6.
That it literally is a master of instant death. That's what they say. Like that's like you can. You know what? I'm just gonna go ahead just for the
I just want to roll
lulz.
40
Yeah,
d6.
that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna roll or well 20 d6 and then just double whatever the roll is real quick. So because I
I rolled
literally
139.
yeah, there's not a lot of things. I mean, at 17th level, the things you're going to be fighting, there probably are a decent amount that have over 130 hit points. But I'm going to do it anyway. We're going to do freaking 20 d6. And we're going to just say like plus 5. 20 d6 plus 5. So that's 78 damage. There are a lot of 6s and 5s in that, actually. So that's pretty crazy. So that's 78. And then you just double 78 to what? 156. That's 156 damage right there. And that's not including any extra like elemental damage you might have from like, you know, a flame tongue or from other items or things that you have. That's 156 damage that was just dealt.
Yeah, 20 d6, the average damage is like somewhere around 70 or a little bit below or a little bit above. So you roll 70, you get a plus. Let's say you have like a +2 weapon. You have like +7 to the damage.
+7 to the damage.
You're already at like 77. Say you know, whatever. So 77, you times that by 2. I mean, that's
140 or yeah,
140 damage.
150, yeah, 150 damage. So it's like it's
that's one attack. Like that's really good.
Yeah, it would be like actually I might be wrong about my other calculations too, because it's 78 plus 78, yeah.
But the reality is this is enough to kill a guardsman outright. Right. So say you're sneaking around a castle and your whole goal is to kill people off and then get to like the chamber. You send an assassin out in front. They sneak up to a guardsman, fucking stab him in the neck through the helmet and the shoulder plate. You'll most likely auto kill. You drag him.
Well, yeah, no, there's no way that like at 17th level, if you're fighting a guard, you don't even have to use Death Strike on them. They can.
No, I mean,
but
I'm not talking about just like normal guards. Like
talking about like
palace guards,
yeah.
or like palace guards that are actually like good fighters. And
yeah, they might be like at least level 10, I guess. Like palace guards, like probably at least like level 10. Like you definitely could probably take them out too. Like, well, I mean, at that point, hopefully the GM might be giving them like, yeah, like fighter or paladin levels.
Or they just have like 100 something HP.
Yeah. And so you can still take them out pretty quickly too. Yeah, like for sure. At least one of them. Or if you're like stealthing it, like I would say you could stealthily take out that dude. And if you can end him like right away, like
guess what? Initiatives reset. You're back to no.
Exactly. If you can just like, again, you're going literal Assassin's Creed style where you're just like, shink, like just, you know.
Yeah, think Far Cry.
Yeah,
like the Far Cry games where you.
Or again, think Metal Gear Solid or freaking Splinter Cell. You know, like all those games where you literally can just press a button and you just silently take them out. You know, like I would love to have a thing like that. It's just again the reality is that those types of scenarios, they just don't really occur too often. Like you just like unless you're maybe playing like an evil campaign where you're gonna do stuff like that, like those types of scenarios and situations just aren't really gonna occur that often for you as an assassin. Like it's just, you know, like you can, especially again at 17th level. Like don't get me wrong, your assassinate gets stronger the higher level you get up. Like because again, you still get the instant crit, and again, your sneak attack increases in level as you go up. So you're still gonna have a buco amount of potential damage for sure. That's still the case for sure, but it's just so highly situational is my issue with it. And that's a lot of people's issues with it is why, and I'm pretty sure in Baldur's Gate 3, they actually modified and augmented it so that it isn't so situational. I haven't played an Assassin's Rogue, I think. Or I actually have. I know, but I've forgotten it because it's been a while now. But it's like, yeah, it's a little bit too situational. It's a little bit too like having to, again, similar to the Drunken Master Monk, or even the Thief Rogue, right? The tabletop version of the Thief Rogue. It just it leaves a lot to be desired, and it takes too much potential, like tweaking or homebrewing or you know finagling to really make it kind of viable in the most like likely or normal D&D campaign like sessions and everything. And that's why it usually kind of falls to the wayside compared to a lot of the other subclass choices that you get, even though it is such an iconic subclass, an assassin. Who doesn't love or want to be an assassin who can just do that stuff? But it requires so much very specific like planning and execution from your GM as well as you. And it's just, yeah, it's just so much that it becomes, as opposed to so many other things that are far more convenient, right? This requires very deliberate like planning and execution, where many others are far more just convenient and versatile for any manner of situations. And that is usually the case for D&D campaigns, is that they are usually very unexpected. You can find yourself in one spot. They're not very consistent in terms of like what can happen from here to there, right? Because the GM also is constantly wanting to introduce that subversion of expectations, to surprise their players, to give those shocking twists and unexpected whatevers. And so this class, unfortunately, though, is highly reliant on having a very clear-cut plan of attack, of execution, and of whatever. And so that doesn't always jive as well in most normal D&D session expectations.
Yeah.
But with that being said, that I believe is the totality of the Assassin Rogue, as told by here, the Arcane Archive, as well as the full MetaTalks subclass discussion for today. We hit all four. We hope you guys enjoyed everything. And once again, as always, please be sure to like and comment on the video, subscribe and share the channel. Any like support is always highly appreciated and thankful. Me and Sam, again, we just love doing this. We love talking about this stuff if it hasn't been obvious already. And we hope that you guys get even a little bit amount of the same kind of joy and fun and pleasure that we do talking about this stuff with you guys and each other. But thank you all once again, as always. We hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will catch you next time when we dive back down into the archive. So long, y'all.